This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook, and I have a different type of entrepreneur. We haven't had one on yet. Phil Hellmuth Jr., the world champion poker player, 15 bracelets, one main event back in '89. We're gonna have to ask him how much he actually won back then, how much that's worth today. But most importantly, I had to have him on the Playbook because he wrote a book. You know when people tell you, hey man, you wrote my book? I bet you tons of people tell you that about this book. Positive.
It's so true, it's so true. But you know, I mean, it's interesting. For me, as a poker player, you have to look inside because I'm one of the only professions you can lose all of your money on any given day. And the pressure that creates, if you get a little too drunk or whatever, you know what I mean? It's the pressure that creates. And as human beings, when we're losing, we tend to, you know, you learn this from the stock market, we press. And in poker, you press. And so there's all those sessions where you play 30 or 40 hours to try to get even because you just can't get away from the table. And there's just legends of all these poker players losing all their money in one day, 60-hour session. And then they usually fight back. And so I had to be on guard for that. It made me look inside all the time and look for truth. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of this book.
And the subtitle, right? You're at the right place.
You're always in the right place at the right time.
Which is what I always say.
8 life tips. I mean, people don't understand this.
Yeah.
You want me to give you a story
Please.
about that?
Yeah, I would love it.
So this is in my book, and
I might steal it for my speech tomorrow, so
you can have it.
Good. Yeah.
So it's very simple. You have a guy who sat down at the dinner table with his wife, and he says, "I have the perfect idea for a sports bar. 5 perfect reasons why it will work." Shh. This guy says, "Martha, please pass the peas." Martha, please pass the peas was given to me by Carl Westcott, who's a famous kind of a billionaire who was a great friend of mine. That means the guy's done with the idea. Let's move him over. Right next door, the guy's sitting at the dinner table with his wife and kids, lays out the perfect sports bar, 5 reasons why it's gonna work, right? The difference is this guy, the next day after work, all he does is he walks into his favorite sports bar. Once he opens the door to walk in, he's also opened a metaphorical door. Imagine, once that door is open, there's 8 more doors behind it. You could tell me what those 8 doors are. Anybody listening could tell me what those 8 doors are. You know, maybe this guy, maybe he buys this guy's bar. Maybe this guy helps him with financing. Maybe there's all these possibilities. But all he's done is walk in and meet the owner of the sports bar. And so, so these guys are both in the right place at the right time. They both have great ideas, but one person has taken the step forward. And too many people out there won't take that first step. So we're always in the right place at the right time. And next.
That is so true. You know, one of the things you were talking about, losing it all. Have you ever seen the movie The Greatest Showman? When I get teased. Hugh Jackman, right? But that one line, you know, when he's going to reinvest, like, yeah, but you could lose everything. And he just quickly turns and goes, that's how I got here. When I think of entrepreneurs, when I think of poker players, that's how you got there. You can't get there unless you understand that everything comes through you, and they're hyper competitive, entrepreneurs and poker players, but everything comes through you, Phil. You cannot have a scarce value or any fear. So how do you take control of your ego, which gives you that need to be afraid?
I mean,
the ego's never more present than in poker.
For me, that's a very difficult question, but luckily I've been married to, you know, my wife for 29 years, who happens to be, you know, super high EQ and IQ, kind of a genius, you know, a doctor at Stanford, a psychiatrist. And so for her, she's been able to help me a little bit, especially through couples therapy, right?
Yeah.
Because when you have a big ego, it's not good for a marriage.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do. Honey, you're watching. She knows. We won't let them in the room to tell the truth, but yes.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think of the primary relationship as being like, imagine 2 fists together, and you just keep working on it and working on it, and you're in an environment where you can both speak up and be listened to. Normally, if the average person goes home to their wife and says, you're doing this poorly, they're going to be, F you, you're worse at this than I am. You never get anywhere. But when you're in therapy, she'll come up to me and say, I think this is true about you. Now, 90% of the time, I'll say, I think you're right, and I'll take a look at it. Occasionally, I might refute it, but without an F you, you know, in a very comfortable, with a therapist there, I don't think this is the case because of this. But, you know, so my wife keeps bringing me things, and I just keep searching deep to improve and get better and better. And what happens as your primary relationship gets better, every other relationship gets better. The first concrete evidence I had of this was maybe in '04. I was driving along with a friend, and I was listening to him, and he started crying. He was 72 years old. John Benetti starts crying in the car. And he's like, "It's the first time you've really listened to me." And I just smiled and thought, wow, that's all the work my wife and I are doing, now extending to my best friends.
That is awesome. In the book itself, right, 8 tips. I always like to say, and I mean, just so you know, I mean, the who's who, Tony Robbins, right, Draymond Green, like, the who's who endorsed this book. And I heard
Draymond Green's my boy, so
that's awesome.
I mean, I love him.
Well, Sheryl Sandberg, I mean, this
Sheryl
is
Sandberg gave me an amazing,
Yes.
she read it cover to cover and was just like,
70
wow.
minutes. It's for millennials, 70 minutes cover to cover. But what's the number one tip?
I mean, all right, I'll go into this. It's called Hate Hurts You. And, you know, I mean, I came up with this when I was studying Buddhism at Esalen, the spiritual place, on the California coast.
I'm a
You
Judo
familiar?
Buddha. Yeah.
Okay. So I was studying Buddhism with the Lama Suryadas, and I had all these realizations. And so I kind of came up with my own 3-step system for getting rid of hate. And I think for every person out there, well, I'll take you through the exercise if you're watching this podcast. You at home, imagine you're just think about the person you hate the most. Get that person in your mind or dislike the most. Okay, that person's not thinking about you right now and probably hasn't thought about you in days or weeks. You're using negative energy, hating somebody. So I'm telling you at home, forgive not for that person, forgive for yourself. And so it's a 3-step process. So first part of that process is to think about that person and imagine why they slighted you. Now, in most cases, that doesn't work. There's a good reason you hate them. But sometimes there's a little bit of, solace when you think, well, maybe they did it for this reason. Number 2, try to come up with something good about that person.
Find the light in them.
Yes. Do they give money to charity? Are they good to their wife? Are they good to their kids? Find something. And then the 3rd step is kind of a form of meditation, where you just make sure the house is empty. No one's going to bother you for an hour because you don't know how long you're going to be out. And just go to your bed or a nice comfortable place where you're not going to be disturbed, this is key, for an hour. And just kind of close your eyes and start thinking about that person that you hate. And start sending him love. It's the most unnatural thing you've ever done. You're like, what the heck is going on here? It's so hard to do. You send him love, you send him love, you send him love, you send him love. And then while I'm down, I usually will send all the people that I dislike love or hate. And then I'll also send it to my family and my parents and my wife and my kids. But whatever. The point is to spend 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is. Now the freaky thing is, when I've done this in the past with 2 people in specific, the next time I saw that person, it's like they had completely changed towards me.